So today was a little busy, or this week was a little busy.
So you're doing two jobs, but you're also getting double pay, right?
No. I wish.
Yeah, it's not quite the way it usually works out, huh?
Yeah.
Oh well. So
but
Dan,
it's good. I'm excited about it.
you think you'll like it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good change. So.
Well, good. And I want to hear more about your job, but not yet.
Okay.
I want to move through this chronologically and learn all about little baby Danny Caldwell and stuff like that. So I want to tell you real quick though, before I met you personally, I knew of you.
Really?
I did. Yeah.
How did you know of me?
Well, back in when was it? 2000, maybe 2 or 3? Somewhere between 2001 and 2005, Payson Community Theater did a production of Footloose.
Yes.
Which, of course, Footloose is kind of a big deal down in Payson because they're at the high school.
It was filmed there.
Yeah, it was filmed there. You and I both went to Payson High School, right?
Yes.
I'd assume you probably heard a lot of the same rumors as I did, like, oh, Kevin Bacon smoked a doobie in that bathroom stall. My mom saw it.
He totally did. I saw the movie.
Well, there you go.
It down the toilet.
There you go. Yeah. So like Footloose is, a cool movie anyway, but kind of maybe it's especially a big deal down here in Utah County where Payson High School, the Lehigh Roller Mills, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I wanted to be in it. So I was just an extra in this production of Footloose, which we were putting on at the high school. So it was extra cool. And your little brother was in there.
He was in it. Yep.
Now, Nate was a cool guy, and I don't think he was trying to discourage me in any way. I was a little bit younger than Nate, too. And he was buddies with my neighbor, Zach Freeman, who I already looked up to a lot. We'd get together to, like, play guitar and stuff like that. And I felt like so cool to be included, with these cool older guys. And of course I knew Bailey too. My wife and I went to middle school and junior high and high school with Bailey as well, your little sister.
So you're the same age as Bailey.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Does that make you feel old? Yeah, it's not intended to. Like, as we get older, we're the same age, aren't we?
No.
Like
it's true.
That's totally how I feel anyway. But I
hang out with Bailey. Bailey's cool.
Bailey's way cool, absolutely. So I mean, I have wondered before, though, like, where is that line? Because like sometimes I feel it like a little bit, like if I'm hanging out with someone who's like 21, 22, it's like, all right, kid, But then like, where's that line where it's suddenly like, yeah, we're all just the same. We're all just grown ups.
He said it's 30.
Is it 30?
30's the age.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, anyway, so we were driving home from a Footloose practice one night. And Nate, your brother, put on an album. I don't know what group it was. I remember him mentioning that they were a Disneyland band, which was something I didn't know was a thing at the time, but they had bagpipes.
Off Kilter.
Oh, Off Kilter. Well, I know of the band. That's funny because now I've listened to that band, but I didn't know that was the band we were listening to then.
Yes.
Well, there you go. So we were listening to Off Kilter, and I was like, man, this is so cool. And he's like, yeah, bagpipes are great. I was like, man, I'm going to learn to play bagpipes. I was like 11 or 12 at the time. I was like, I'm going to learn to play bagpipes. And I really meant it because that was like my dad really wanted me to learn bagpipes. Like I was really planning to. And Nate, I don't think he meant to discourage me or anything like that. When you're young, sometimes you speak a bit, what's the word? When you say something like, I've told you a million times, it's like, there's a word for it.
Yes.
Hyperbolically. When you're young, sometimes you get you wax a bit hyperbolic sometimes.
Yes.
So I don't think he meant this in any sort of negative way, but he said something like, oh, dude, my brother plays bagpipes. It's too late, like you have to start like really young. There's no way you could learn to play at this point in your life,
Which the funny thing is, I started when I was like 15. So.
Hey, maybe I was just so mature as like an 11 or 12-year-old that he assumed I was already out of high school, and that's why we weren't seeing each other in classes.
Maybe that's probably it.
That's probably it. But so anyway, that was the first that I knew of you. That you were like the object of this message to me that like I had missed the boat on bagpipes.
You missed the boat. Well, I'm glad you didn't listen to it.
Yeah, well, it worked out, and now we're friends through bagpipes, and that makes me happy.
Yes.
So anyway,
awesome.
This isn't supposed to be me telling my stories. Just that's how I first knew of you, my good friend Danny. Now I want to know about you. where you grew up, what was life like as a kid, and when did you first become aware of bagpipes and think I'm going to play that someday, and where did you learn and all that kind of stuff? Take me back and tell me a story.
Okay, so I moved around a lot when I was little, but we finally settled in Payson when I was about 11.
Now, and I'll try not
And
to
my
interrupt you too much, but
Okay,
wasn't some of that moving around international,
it wasn't.
or was it that
It was within
I
Utah and Idaho.
I just remember a connection between your mom and Africa.
My mom did a lot of her growing up in the Ivory Coast and Lesotho
Oh, okay, that's why I
in,
had that
in
connection in my
Africa.
mind. Okay.
Yep, she grew up all over the place, so she traveled quite a bit, but we never really left Utah, so.
I'm not making fun of you. It's still cool.
But so when I was 11, we moved to Payson, it felt like a big change. We came from, um, we were living in Sandy. Before that, it was West Valley, so we'd been in the Salt Lake area. And so coming down to Payson, my mom always wanted some property so she could have a few animals. And so we moved to Payson, and I remember it feeling like, where have we moved? It's like, it was at the time there was one stoplight in Payson.
Yeah.
It was pretty small. Um,
Yeah,
so we
you
moved
said
there when I was
what year
11.
would this have been? Do you remember about what
This
year it
was
was?
in 93, I think.
That's cool because we moved to Payson in 94. No, we also moved to Payson in 93. We moved to Payson in the same year.
Wow.
Look at that.
Yeah. So, so I was in Payson, and then when we came into the junior high, Don Smith had started the beginning the bagpipe class. I did not take the beginning the bagpipe class.
Rebel.
I had Don for science, and Don scared me, so I didn't want to take it.
I think that Don won't mind. I think he'll find it funny that you're not the first person to have told me something like that.
Well, I think Don knows that. Like,
Yeah.
we had some conflicts in junior high. Things repaired and had a really good experiences with Don.
Yeah.
But a bunch of my friends took the class, and so then coming into high school, they got into the pipe band. So it was like Justin Hadley, Joey Wilkinson, Jacob Moody, Leanne, Leanne Tanner, Camille Brunson. Those were all my friends, and then through them, I met some of the cool like seniors that were in the pipe band, and so all these friends of mine were in the pipe band. Came summer at the Payson Scottish Festival, I like hung out with them the whole time, and I felt so left out. So I went and told my mom I want to learn bagpipes.
Now, were you feeling left out mostly because you weren't playing the music with them, or did it have a lot to do with being the only one there who wasn't in a kilt?
Probably both.
Yeah.
It was totally like a FOMO thing. I just felt like I was missing out, and I wanted to be part of this thing, and all my friends were part of it. So I went and told my mom that I wanted to learn the bagpipes. And I think she just thought, like, what on earth? Like, we can't just go buy you a set of bagpipes because you want to try this. So I'm like, no, it's a practice chanter, and it's not super expensive. So, and I had taken some guitar lessons before, and like, I never got super into it. And so I think she was skeptical. But I started taking private lessons from Don, along with Laura Money. And so we like did joint lessons. Once again, I was afraid of Don, so I made Laura do it with me.
Oh, I see.
But Laura was, she was kind of in the same boat. She kind of wanted to do this thing and kind of missed the class. So we did it together, and yeah, I started playing, and I actually I got into the high school band and was only in it for a short period of time. I think a few others have talked about there was a whole bunch of political drama within the high school pipe band at that time.
Isn't it just the funniest thing to look back on now?
Yes.
What were we worried about?
Yes. And so I left and I went and joined White Peaks.
Yeah.
So then I played with White Peaks.
You were part of the Exodus.
Yes. So I think it was just one summer. I don't even think I got up on pipes while I was in the high school band. But But then I went and played with White Peaks.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, played with them up through leaving on an LDS mission. And I played when I got home from an LDS mission. Basically until, and then I took another break, and then I went to Garden Valley.
And we've loved having you, and our plan is that you'll never ever go anywhere else.
That is my plan. So.
And of course you were the subject of some of the most adorable photographs from some recent Highland games, because you kilted up some of your kids and had them play drum and stuff too.
They were so cute.
Yeah,
they've gotten bigger now. The kids don't fit them anymore.
Yeah. You had that toy drum. It was your oldest, right? Who was wearing the toy drum and would march along in mass bands and stuff.
Yeah, I think he did it once, and then my middle.
Did your middle kid?
When we got
too?
we got like one of those tom, like an actual drum.
Oh yeah.
For the oldest one to carry. So towards the end, the oldest one was carrying the tom, and then the middle one had
I remember that. Yeah.
The toy, and the youngest had a flag that he'd wave. So.
I don't know for sure, but I suspect that like USA Kilts probably owes you a commission, just because I suspect that parents seeing your kids march along with the rest of the band probably ran to the internet that night and bought kilts for their children, just because it was so
cute. They had a lot of exposure at the games, and
they were popular, man.
A few parades with them. So.
Yeah, that's right. So now, in terms of just like we've got kind of a topic, of course, that I do want us to get to, but I'm curious around that pipe band stuff. What was happening in your schooling or personal experiences that put you on a trajectory to land where you are professionally at present? Do you see a pathway that brought you to where you are right now? Or is it just like the craziest, most random thing?
No, there's a pathway. So in high school, I wanted to be an architect, actually. But I started to realize I can't draw. So that was a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So I like architecture. That was always something that was interesting to me, but I don't. I have a lot of artists in my family. I don't have that. So I've painted a little bit, but not to have anybody pay for my work.
I see.
So
yeah.
So I decided. When did I decide? I think it was on my mission. I decided that I wanted to be a school teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So when I came back, that was my trajectory. I was in the secondary education program at UVU, and my thought was I was going to be a history teacher.
Oh yeah.
And I decided that I should probably get a job working with kids before I become a teacher and find out I hate kids.
Right. Yeah, that's smart.
So at the time I was working at a backpacking store in Orem, out and back.
Why are you so cool, man?
That was a fun job.
I bet it was.
But while I was there one day, this guy came in and he said, "Hey, can I hang up a sign? We're just looking. I run a wilderness program for at-risk youth, and we're looking for employees." And I got talking to him, and he basically hired me on the spot.
He was like, "Never mind, I don't need to hang this poster up. Right. I'll just take you."
And I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is what I'm looking for," because I was thinking I wanted to try working with kids.
Yeah.
So I went down there. It was this ranch wilderness program. So
and hey, working in isolation with at-risk youth, that's like the most highly concentrated will you hate kids or not experience that you could possibly have.
Right? It totally is.
That's trial by fire right there.
The program was in Mona.
Oh,
so
yeah.
If you know where Mona is, it's in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, you thought
south of Payson.
Yeah, you thought Payson was nothing. Go down to Mona.
Yeah. So I remember driving down there and thinking, what in the hell am I doing? Like, these are like kids. I don't like these kids. Like, these are like...
These are mean kids.
Like, these weren't just at-risk kids. These were kids, like, in the criminal justice system, gang members, that kind of stuff. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I didn't even want to be anywhere near these kids in high school.
I grew up in Payson. I just got home from my mission. Why am I going to go hang out with these scary teenagers?
Exactly. So I got down there, and it's like it was a ranch. The kids like lived at this ranch. They worked with the animals. They did chores on the ranch, and then they'd go on these week-long wilderness excursions.
Mm.
But I got down there, and after I got started, I'm like, I love this. It was, I was surprised how much I did like it, and I realized that I had a knack for it, for running like therapy groups and just being able to work with these kids. So I realized like the reason I wanted to be a teacher was because I really wanted to help kids. And the history was just, I had to pick something to teach, but history wasn't something I was passionate about. And I realized I'd never taken a psychology class, but I started to realize that I kind of had this passion for psychology because I'd taken a couple in my education program. But before that, like high school, I didn't take psychology or anything like that. So I switched my major to social work. And so my undergrad was in behavioral science and social work, and then I got a master's degree in mental health counseling. So,
now, Danny, you don't have to reveal anything you don't want to, but I am curious because my experience has been that like my mom and a lot of her siblings, and she has a lot, have a lot of them have taken various sort of psychology or psychology related courses as well. And many of them have joked that it's because they needed to figure out why they were so messed up. You know, and so I'm curious, like once you started taking that coursework, did you do a lot of like introspection and also like maybe retroactive psychoanalysis of like your parents and your siblings and your neighbors and your friends? Like, did you suddenly start like putting things together and figuring people out?
I think that's part of what I love about it. It's understanding people and figuring people out.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think most people who go into that field, that's part of the fascination about it, is just understanding people. So yeah, and I think to some, as being a therapist, it's when you're helping people with their problems, you have to look at your own stuff. And so they're definitely, I think most people who go into that field maybe don't, I think some maybe do it because they're trying to figure themselves out.
Yeah.
If that's not why they went in, they quickly get to the point that, oh, I'm going to have to figure myself out.
Yeah.
and you have to start looking at the stuff you haven't wanted to look at and start understanding yourself better, which is a lifelong process. So
yeah, what's the name of
still
that?
Doing it.
What's the name of that book, that database of like conditions?
The DSM?
Yeah, the
Diagnostic
DSM.
and Statistical Manual.
Yeah, I've wondered
Mental
how many
disorders.
times someone like cracks the DSM and, you know, in their studies suddenly goes, "Oh, that's me." You know?
Yeah. You know, that's partly when I realized that, like, this is what I need to be doing, because I'm such a nerd when it comes to the DSM. I love the DSM.
Yeah.
Like, I just read it. It's fun for me.
You just
If you've seen the DSM, it's like a 5-6, it might even be like 800-page book. It's thick.
Yeah, I spend
Like
a lot of time in like building code manuals and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I imagine it being similar, but for the human psyche. And so like to imagine you like sitting back in a Snuggie with like a glass of Chardonnay in the evening and the DSM, like I'm gonna relax. Like what?
No,
well, at least you love what
it's
you do.
fascinating
That's
to
great.
me. So yeah, so that's kind of where I ended up, where I am. I worked with kids for a while, and then I did private practice for a while, and now I'm back working with the same juvenile gang members that I was working with.
They're your people, huh?
That I started with. Yep.
That's great. That's wonderful, because we all need somebody to care about us and, you know, put forth effort on our behalf and stuff like that, for sure. So I'm glad people like you exist. I spent the tiniest little bit of time when I was younger working for the Forest Service. I did a little bit of time with their volunteer crew, and so we'd go out with you know, groups from the local juvenile delinquency hall and stuff like that, right, to do like service projects on trails and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I was basically just there to use the power tools, you know, because they wouldn't let any of these kids use power tools. Yeah. And I do remember like just seeing how the professionals there interacted with these kids and thinking like, oh, that's awesome, but also feeling personally like woefully inept, you know, like to do that myself. And so I'm glad that people who can do that exist. That's really good.
Well, thank you.
But I can use power tools. That's the one thing I discovered. I was real good at running a drill. So it takes all kinds. Now, and I don't want to jump around too much here, but I am curious, what about your your experience, like maybe I'm asking you to do too much here, right? But like the connection that happens in my brain is I think about like after Zach passed away, it was you who organized and coordinated this sort of like group. Was it a therapy session? It was like a sharing session, you know, for a lot of members of the band and close friends of Zach's who were all missing him. And that was special and useful and nice. I'm curious, like, how blurred are the lines for you between your professional life and your personal life? You know, like, are there lines at all in this field where you work?
Well, I think as far as like that situation with Zach, that was personal. Like
Mm-hmm.
I needed to process through it, and that's, I mean, that was, and I know like I was definitely not as close to Zach as others, but I felt a connection with Zach. Zach was um really instrumental in getting me playing bagpipes again, and through the changes in my life, encouraging me to keep coming. Um, and so it was hard for me um, when he passed away. And so, organizing that was like, I need to talk about this.
Yeah.
And I know the importance of talking about things. So that was personal, but also probably, I mean, the thought of we need to do this was probably more of a professional thought, but for me personally, it was selfish.
Well, yeah, it's
But
like you got a toolkit, right? Because I'd imagine everybody there had that need. That's why we were there. But I wonder if any of us, I certainly didn't think, like, I didn't have like the vocabulary or the tool set or whatever it was, to say we should gather together and talk. The need was there, but no understanding of how to service that need.
Yeah, and so then I recognize needs and things in my own life, but as far as like professional, like I have pretty strong lines of like these are my boundaries with professional things. Like I don't give any even when I didn't work with kids, like I wasn't giving out my personal information. My social media, if you're not friends with me, is pretty locked down.
Sure, yeah.
People can't see that. I don't share certain things with clients, especially the kids I work with now. Like there's no way I would give them any kind of information that could help them find me once they're out.
That makes sense. Well, but to what degree do you feel like? Oh, go ahead.
Well, just that I think that there is a strong, there's boundaries within it, but as far as lines, like therapy plays a role in all aspects of my life. My partner knows that, when we're talking, there's sometimes I'll like talking to him or talking to the kids or I'll switch into this like therapist mode.
I'd imagine.
And it's like the way I talk changes.
Does he ever get annoyed and be like, "Stop psychoanalyzing me. I'm just trying to talk here."
No, and most people, I recognize that some people are sensitive to that. So I typically don't do it unless someone's like, I need to talk through this.
Right. Do you have one of those couches? Right. I need to lay down and talk.
I should get one.
Do you have like some prop half moon glasses that you can balance on the end of your nose and just like a clipboard so you can just sit back and really set up? I
have the clipboard, but the rest of this is all good.
You'll gather the set together as the years go by, I'm sure. You need a cob pipe to put in the corner of your mouth,
Yeah.
So I am curious though, how do you feel like you can see any clear ways, and maybe this bleeds into sort of the subject that I asked you to kind of talk to me about today. Do you see any ways that like clear lines where the training that you've had maybe affects the way that you experience the bagpipe world? I don't know if it would be like the social interaction within groups or the way that sort of a hierarchy of leadership functions, or even the effects of music itself in a person's life to create it and to hear it. Is that too vague to say now go, or is that close enough that you feel like you have something, like I'm like,
I think I can do something with that.
Go.
All right. So I think that through my work as a therapist, I recognized a few things. I recognize the importance of community and the lack of that we have, especially in the United States. We're a very independent country. We value ourselves in independence. And through that, especially I would say in the last, probably since the 70s, and for sure since like social media and stuff, that's become worse. We're isolated. We don't connect with people. We, there was a study that the average man over the age of 30 um, can't tell you one close friend, and that's because a lot of, especially for men, there's kind of this expectation that we go to work, and I see this even more in Utah, I think, with the LDS culture.
Sort of the
We go to work,
traditional gender role kind of thing.
yeah, and you can have friends at work, you can have friends at church stuff, but if you're not doing one of those things, you should be home with your family. And so there's not really an outlet for people to connect and to have friendships. And so the need for community is there, and to have a community, there needs to be something common that we're doing or creating together, to kind of something that brings us together. And so I see, for me, I see the bagpipe world as being that. It's a community that we come together, and especially bagpipes, it's so unique that those who do it are can get really close and really connected, because like, who else do you talk about bagpipes to?
Yeah.
Except those in the band. So there's that community aspect.
that makes a lot of sense. My wife asked me not too long ago. It was during this COVID stuff, so it couldn't have been very long ago. Because I play a lot of different musical instruments, none of them well, but bagpipes are kind of limited in sort of their, when you consider them next to something, like a stringed instrument or, a piano or a brass, basically anything else, they're kind of limited, in terms of like what you can do with them, because you only have the 9 notes, and stuff like that. It's kind of a rigid system. And that's part of what makes them interesting. But at the same time, my wife just asked me, she was like, if you could only have one instrument to play for the rest of your life, which would it be, And after thinking for just a sec, I was like, I think it would be bagpipes, even though that might not be the most musically fulfilling thing for me personally. It's because bagpipes are the only instrument I play that gives me this regular chance to get together with other people and do something with them.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, and I think with that, with that, we can get into the kind of the psychology about that. Are we ready for that?
Yeah, let's get deep.
Okay. So like with music in general, we see that it bonds people like cross-culturally. It's something that every culture has its own music, and it's something that humans who never had any connection to each other all created. And so on some level, it's thought to be kind of part of the collective unconscious, which if you're familiar with Carl Jung, that's Jung, not Young. Carl Jung was a psychologist, worked pretty closely with Freud, but he's the one who came up with this idea of the collective unconscious, and that all humans have certain unconscious parts of their brain that connect all of them. Now we kind of see that as it's an evolutionary thing. We do see that, but it's that we all evolved from the same place. So there's certain instinctual things built into us that all humans have.
Yeah, that sounds. Was it Jung who talked about like archetypes that show up in stories?
Yes.
I see. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm familiar with some of that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and those are some of the collective unconscious. We see stories from all different cultures that have very similar characters and aspects to them. You have the hero. You have what are some of the father figure. All these different we called were archetypes, and these are all parts of the unconscious human psyche that come out in all these different cultural contexts. But music is one of those things. We see it across cultures, and we see it fulfilling very similar things. It's used in ritual. So those we see it being used in courtship. There's not a culture that doesn't have like love songs.
Hmm.
In expressing identity, cultural identity or personal identity, and then human expression, being able to express ourselves emotionally.
Hmm.
And we see that across all cultures, that music for thousands of years has been used for those four purposes.
Yeah.
But it makes us like wonder like why does it connect us? Because even like thinking of like that connection in pipe band, one thing I love going to concerts, like rock concerts and
Oh
stuff.
yeah,
And one thing I love
you've
about
blown
it,
out your ability to hear stuff, haven't you?
I have, yeah, my hearing is, I have like the hearing of like someone about 15 years older, 15, 20 years older than me.
It's perfect for someone
I
who plays
play
the
in concerts
bagpipes.
and bagpipes. So my dad always told me, you need to wear earplugs when you play your bagpipes or you're going to be deaf. And I would never listen to him.
Right.
And now I wear earplugs.
Yep. I only just now
deaf.
started myself, like within the last year or two.
But like at concerts, like one thing I love about them, it's you go and there's just all these people. You don't know any of them, but you're friends with everybody. Like everybody's like, there's this connection. This music brings us together. We're all here to hear this band that we all like, and like we're all friends. And it's always something that kind of fascinates me. That I could at a concert, I could like stop and talk to anyone, or just sit down and just have a conversation, and people are open to it because we all know that, hey, you're cool because you're you're here.
You're here. That's right. Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah.
But some of that, it's like, why is that happening? And so there've been studies that have started to show there's kind of two main things that we see music do for humans, and that are kind of the theories as to why music connects and bonds us the way it does. And those two things are what they call self-other merging. And then the other is the release of endorphins.
Self-other merging sounds. It puts me in the mind of those the smart StarCraft aliens that can like merge into a stronger being. Is that?
Yes, exactly. That's what music can do for us.
Okay, I'm into this.
So it's but like it's you hear that like you can, if you've ever been at a big concert, and there's that slow song that starts, and it used to be lighter, but now everyone holds up their cell phone lights.
Yep.
And you're in an audience of 20,000 people, and they're all, swaying similarly. You're connected in that. And during musical, and especially when people are creating music together, and you'll recognize this when you're playing in like pipe band, that there are moments where you suddenly become one with everyone. And it's somewhat like they've done studies where so somebody will be sitting at a table and their arm will be underneath the table, but then they put kind of this fake shirt over them with this fake arm that's on top of the table. And so they have one hand on top of the table, and then the other hand is this fake hand, and their hand is underneath. And they will brush the fake hand with like a paintbrush, while at the same time brushing the person's hand under the table with a paintbrush. And the sensation that the person has is that their hand is on top of the table. They feel connected with that fake arm that's not theirs. And so
the
idea
like
is
the thing that's not part of them is doing the thing that is happening to the part that is part of them at the same time.
Yeah. But then this thing that's not them becomes them.
I see.
And so we merge into this inanimate object, and it becomes part of us. So similarly, when we're creating something with someone, so I'm playing the bagpipes and I'm watching the pipe major's fingers, like I'm doing that and I'm watching him do that, and there can be moments where suddenly you're feeling that that's you, if that makes sense.
I mean, totally. I wouldn't have had the vocabulary to describe it, but I have had these experiences for sure. I've even had these moments where you're watching the pipe major's fingers, your fingers are doing like just exactly the same at just the right time, like it's so in sync. And then you hear the snare drums, like they hit a couple of flams right as you're doing a couple of doublings, and so it's just like so exactly the same thing, and as you come down the scale, then you hear the bass and tenor. It's like this thing, I don't know what to call it, but I know the feeling that you mean for sure.
It's magical. It's almost like these moments of this euphoric experience of like when it just all merges together perfectly. So that's that self-other merging we're talking about. And we see it with people who, singing a duet with someone, or we see it with dancing, which is also very connected with music. Usually there's music with dancing.
Yeah.
But we're seeing that there's two things that are happening. There's synchronization and there's mimicry. So first, mimicry is something we learn very young. So like you've probably seen it with your kids when they're really little. They copy you.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And they when they're not capable of doing it, they always want to like help you with chores. Once they're capable of it, they don't want to do it anymore.
That's one of the greatest laments that all parents share, I'm sure.
Yes, but they want to like copy you. They'll say things that you say. Sometimes you hear your own voice coming out of your children's mouths. And that's your kids mimicking you. And that connects us with cultures. We all do it. Mimicry is fashion. Like we dress certain ways because that's what other people are doing. And it makes us accepted and connected to our culture.
Hello, friends. Just a quick note to make you aware, this podcast is something that I love doing, and I will keep doing it no matter what. But if you want to send me money, I won't say a nay. The easiest way to do that is through Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/DroningOnPodcast. We do regular drawings for bagpipey albums, books, sheet music, and more, including Droning On swag. All patrons are in the figurative hat from whence the names of winners are drawn, and there are other benefits to members as well. They're all listed there at patreon.com/DroningOnPodcast. And speaking of swag, another way to support the show is to buy cool stuff from my little online shop, bagpipeswag.com. There you can find Droning On stuff as well as other pipey and drummy things that my friends and I make. And if you feel so inclined, I genuinely invite you to follow the show on Facebook. It's super fun to have a way to interact over there, to discuss past episodes, and I also like to bounce ideas off of you, my friends, ask you for input on upcoming interviews, that kind of stuff. I'd like to invite you to join in on virtual book clubs and probably lots of other cool stuff that I just haven't even thought of yet as of this recording. It's easy to find. Just get on Facebook and search Droning On Podcast. And if Instagram is more your jam, we're also on there at droning.on.podcast. You can also email the show at thedroningonpodcast@gmail.com. And links to these sites, social media accounts, and more are in the show notes. Leaving the show a positive rating and review helps others to find it, so feel free to do that. And thank you again for listening, you cool human you. That's interesting because it also puts me in the mind of like not even just with little kids. Like I've seen it with myself when I go to a different geographical place for a long period of time for work or something. Like when I was working in Tulsa for months at a time, I kind of started to talk and dress and act a little bit more like I was a guy from Oklahoma instead of a guy from Utah. You know what I mean? Like I started to kind of soak it in a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, and you start picking up and that's, you'll see some people, they move away from where they're from and they kind of lose their accent, but then when they go back, it all of a sudden
it comes back,
snaps back in.
Or even I've even seen people like they never had this accent, but if they're around people who have an accent for long enough, they slip into it. Like they start mimicking it.
Yeah, and as like teenagers, you'll see they're hanging around friends. They start talking like their friends.
For sure.
They start, their mannerisms start to mimic their friends. And that's what we do, like unconsciously, and from it's an evolutionary thing if we look at it, that was our, early humans, the worst thing that could possibly happen to us was being rejected from our tribe.
Harder to survive that way, I guess. Huh?
Yeah, and so we want to be accepted, and a lot of that is we we want to be like them. And so that's, for whatever reason, as humans, we feel comfortable with what's familiar to us. And so things that are familiar to us, we feel more connected to. Not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. It just is what it is.
Yeah,
this is why like identical twins are so close. Nothing's more alike than identical twins. That's why a lot of times people end up marrying someone who kind of looks like they could be
their sibling, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Because we're kind of drawn to what is familiar to us. So that's mimicry.
And is that also why we still have an MSR in bagpipe competitions? Because we're just used to it, so we can't.
Yes.
We can't stop. We can't not. We can't.
We can't not do it. It would be uncomfortable. It would blow the whole thing apart. So then, kind of a more, I guess, refined form of mimicry is synchronization. And that's what music is. Music is synchronization. And when we're synchronizing with other humans, it gives us a different experience. So they've done some studies where kids are asked to like keep a beat with just like a digital sound, and they can do it, but they don't do it well. But when they ask them to keep a beat with a human being, they're keeping the beat. The kids are able to do it a lot better.
Oh, really?
We want to synchronize with other humans.
That makes so much sense, because my kids are taking piano lessons, and we've got this electric keyboard that has a built-in metronome, and I've never been able to get them to follow that metronome. It's just a blinking light and a tap, you know?
Yeah.
But when I clap, they'll stick right with me.
Yeah.
And I guess part of that could be that they see my hands moving so they can anticipate the beat, but still, like, it's like zero success with the electronic metronome and immediate success when it's me clapping.
Yeah. Well, and we see ourselves do this. Like, you can be walking with someone, and all of a sudden you find yourself you're walking in sync with with that person, and all of a sudden it feels weird that you're not, and so you like adjust your steps to
right
fit.
Yeah, you and I have the shared experience of having been Mormon missionaries. I can't tell you how many times out walking with my my missionary companions, I would double step to get out of sync with them, because I didn't want to be walking in sync, but I just,
because it's weird.
It is. Yeah. We already look like we're already wearing like these matching uniforms, to be like lockstep walking down the street. It's just yeah. How funny.
But we do that, and we find that sometimes when you're around someone and you're really connecting with another human, your heartbeats can sync up.
Wow, really?
Yeah, and so we find that a lot of times as a therapeutic technique, when someone is really elevated and like yelling, is you match their level of elevation, and then you slowly start to come down, and they'll follow you.
Oh, I see.
So we try to, as humans, we unconsciously synchronize with each other. So when there's intentional synchronization, it's something that we really connect to and really kind of bond with, which leads to the other part is the release of endorphins.
I'm all about that, man. Give me some of that.
Yeah. So we have something in us called the endogenous opioid system, which is
I understand one of those words.
So endogenous being internal inside of us, opioid is a type. Heroin is an opioid. It's a pain relieving drug, and it's built within us. And so basically, endorphins, which we're familiar with, that's what gets released when you're doing rigorous exercise, kinds of things. And endorphins are a natural opioid. So
maybe I need more to be more refined, but for me, like, I hear endorphin, I just think like that's the feel good stuff.
Yeah, and that's the runner's high. So when people talk about the runner's high, what happens is you're a runner, aren't you?
I dabble.
Well, so like people talk about that, and it's usually about 15 to 20 minutes into a run, right? When you're thinking, this sucks, why am I doing this? You suddenly you just feel better.
Yeah.
And that's the endorphins kicking in. And endorphins are a pain reliever. And so suddenly what's uncomfortable doesn't feel feels uncomfortable.
Right. For sure. I have definitely found that if I can keep going for like 12, 13 minutes, then I can go for 30 minutes. But if I can't make it those first 10, 12 minutes, then I'm going to not make it very far at all.
Yeah. And so what we find, so it decreases stress, it decreases pain. And they found in there's been studies that have shown that people who listen to music before certain procedures need less pain medication. And because music, what we find, releases endorphins within us. And we find that active participation in music, as opposed to passive listening, increases that even more.
So pipe band is given this like triple whammy of like you're synchronizing with people, you're proactively participating in music, like all this stuff is all bundling up and working together. That's why you get the pipe band high as you're leaving the band hall in the evening after practice.
Exactly.
That's why you feel so good.
Yeah. And in addition, we find that when we're synchronizing with people, it releases other neurochemicals. It releases oxytocin, which is kind of been called the bonding chemical. It's released in humans when there's like skin to skin contact.
Oh, is that the one that gushes after a baby is born? Like the mother has like this rush of oxytocin. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's oxytocin, and like when a mother nurses her baby, which is why they a lot of times tell new fathers to hold their infant shirtless.
Yeah.
Because it releases that. Women get that when they're nursing their baby. The men don't get that typically. So
yeah,
it can increase that bonding.
I've laughed before when sitting in the hospital, like after the baby's born and my wife has been able to feed the baby and everything, and then it's like my turn to hold the baby. The doctors and nurses will be like, do skin to skin. And I've laughed at myself for feeling like self-conscious, to like
take your shirt off.
Right. And when I'm sitting right next to my poor wife who just delivered a baby with like a half dozen people in the room, like,
yes,
I have no right to feel self-conscious right now.
But yeah, so when there's skin to skin, when you give someone a hug, it's released. When we're connecting with humans, we get these rushes of oxytocin. Vasopressin is closely linked to oxytocin. It helps with bonding and connecting memory to experience, or memory to emotional, what we're feeling emotionally.
I want to tell you. Tell me what you think of this, Danny. This is maybe too obscure. I'm just going to do it anyway, though. And I don't think my sister will ever listen to this, so she probably won't mind. But also, I won't say her name, so no one will know who she is unless you know who she is, in which case you'll know exactly who she is. But my sister, one of my sisters, I have many, one of them has just gone on and on about how much she loves the show Frasier. You remember the show Frasier?
Yeah.
And I mean, I've seen it. I'm like, yeah, it's a show. It's fine. But like she loves Frasier. Like it could bring her to tears. She loves Frasier so much. And after she had gone on and on for like months, I'd hear her just extolling just the virtues of Frasier, how wonderful Frasier is, how much she loves Frasier. I found out that when she was her babies had a hard time breastfeeding, so she would pump and then feed them, I found out that to pass the time when pumping, she would watch Frasier. And she was holding her babies at the same time too, And I've wondered before, like, does she have a like oxytocin-driven connection to the actors, maybe even especially the main characters in Frasier? Has she established like a mother-child bond with the characters of this show? Is that why she loves it so much?
I think that's possible. Like we connect. Like we all have certain things that we enjoy because they connect to certain experiences in our lives where we were having a positive emotional experience. And we also have things that we don't like because we experienced them when we were having a negative emotional experience. So
that totally makes
I think
sense.
that would make total sense that she feels that connection with Frasier, and probably maybe doesn't even realize why she likes Frasier so much.
I mean,
but
don't get me wrong, it's a fine show,
it.
but I've never heard anybody quite go on quite so much about this show, So I don't know.
Because even like I love Friends,
Yeah.
and part of what I love about Friends is I connect it with being in college. I would watch Friends with my friends in college, like, and that there's really positive memories associated with that show.
Yeah, that's how I feel about The Simpsons. We used to gather every Sunday night as a family. I'd snuggle against my dad's side, and we would watch the episode of The Simpsons that night. And so I love The Simpsons.
Yep. So I think there's probably definitely something to that.
Okay, well, I'm just going to run with that. I'm just going to assume that that's exactly what's happened. My sister has bonded herself like eternally to Frasier.
Well, there are, those chemicals, and we don't realize how strong those are. Like our brains control everything, and what's happening in them, what neurotransmitters and what neurochemicals are being released affects who we are as a person. And so that's why don't do drugs. Drugs mess with those and can change who you are as a person. Why we have traumas, because we experience something, we're in a horrific car accident, and all the rush of chemicals changes who we are as a person.
That's so interesting, because I've known people. I've even wondered if I've had the effect of. I had a big jaw surgery a little while ago, and I've wondered. I feel like my personality has been a little different since then. My wife has commented on it, not in the most positive way either, And I know for sure I have family members who, after a brain surgery, after a serious back surgery, things like that, they definitely are different in sometimes subtle, but sometimes not so subtle ways afterward.
Yeah. Well, and I had, back in college, I was the outdoorsy guy. Like I worked out and back, I rock climbed, I backpacked, I snowboarded, I did all this stuff. And then we went down to Moab for spring break with some friends, and I fell off a cliff while we were rock climbing. 50 feet, hit the ground, life flighted. It was traumatic.
Oh, don't forget that you got scalped on the way down too.
My scalp came off. So it was, but since then, like, I still like that outdoorsy stuff hasn't had the appeal to me, but like, there's part of me that's like, no, that's who I am. But it's like, I've had to kind of like process with myself that, like, it's okay that that's not who you are anymore. That changed me. And I don't enjoy that stuff as much. I mean, I still like going out and camping and sitting by the fire, but that high adrenaline stuff, like, I don't like it anymore. And I keep trying to like tell myself I do, but I don't. That experience, the adrenaline and everything that was released in my brain when I'm having, my life flash before my eyes, like, has caused some trauma. I don't like that stuff anymore. So what we're releasing in our brains, like, changes who we are. And I think we can all see, like, with pipe band or playing with any kind of musical group has changed. If you do that regularly, it changes who you are as a person.
And almost like, surely in a very positive way, right?
Yeah.
Increase your maybe your capacity for happiness, decrease your stress, stuff like that.
Yeah, which is why I think it's interesting that like when you guys got started with Garden Valley, like, you were able to reach out to these people that, like, hey, I know these people used to play, and you really created the band by like reaching out to people who used to play, and people came. And I think it's because that, like, we miss it when you're not playing it. And I'm sure you experienced this through your jaw surgery and COVID. Like, you miss it. Like, I want to be with them. I want to connect with that. And it's, I mean, you go inside, it's because of all these positive brain chemicals that are there as you're connecting and creating with other people. So
that resonates a lot. That makes a lot of sense. And it makes a lot of sense with this sort of realization that I came to recently, and it is partly because of when I was out for the jaw surgery and then out because of COVID and stuff. It's like this recognition that, don't get me wrong, I love bagpipe music. I listen to it recreationally, and I love to play just for the sake of playing. And I know that there are other people that are more serious about the music than I am, for sure, and that's great. But like when it really comes down to it, at least for me personally, I think that I've done bagpipes all these years more than anything because of this like connection to humans. Several humans in particular, of course, because you also, forge lasting friendships that are very important as well, but it's not just the band, it's getting together at the Scottish festivals and stuff as well, these massive group of people that we're all here because we love the same things. It definitely feels cool.
Yeah. Well, and I think that Zach's funeral was a testament to that. Like, Zach created music with a lot of people.
Yeah.
And you saw how many people showed up. I mean, it was astounding.
Yeah.
And I think it's people feel that connection to that community, but also to Zach because of what we've created together. But I'm the same way. I mean, I'm not a fantastic musician. I like music. I try to be good, but I struggle. But I keep coming back because that connection. I love the community and just how it feels. And that's what got me started. Originally, I felt left out. I wanted to connect with my friends, who were all creating this together. So
it's interesting that it's kind of like, if we're setting this up as like, I don't know, a side by side parallel story, we can see like your deeper desire when you were younger to connect with and help and be with young people. The vehicle for that for a time looked like be a history teacher. And then after a while you realize it's not the teaching history that speaks to me deeply. It's this human connection. Yeah. That's what I'm looking for. And like in a similar way, and that doesn't mean that history is uninteresting. History is awesome. It's a wonderful vehicle for that. So it's like, it's not saying throw history out. That's still cool. But it's like recognizing there's a deeper, even more significant, even more important thing here. And maybe in a similar way, it's with pipe band, like, don't throw the pipe band out. The music is amazing. It's wonderful. It's definitely important. It's an important part of this. But there might be an underlying bedrock that's even stronger that is human connection.
Yeah. Yep. I think, which is why I think that you probably find, and I don't have anything to back this up, but you get something out of playing solo music.
For sure, yeah.
But you get something much, much more when you're creating with a group.
Yeah. So I definitely think that's true. I like not that I personally could achieve a high caliber of playing, but you can imagine that like the quality or interestingness of music that you can achieve as a soloist is probably higher than what you can usually achieve in a group, like you can do some crazy stuff as a soloist, but you kind of have to dial it back and hit some standards, some marches and strat space and stuff with a group. But in spite of that, there are more of us who participate in the group than do solos, because there is something special about doing that group thing.
Yeah.
Not that soloing's bad. Soloing's great. Do both.
Yeah.
Do both.
Yep. I think you get different things from either. I think there's a much more internal spiritual connection with the solo, whereas you have more of that collective, unconscious spiritual connection, I think, with the group. So.
Interesting and beautiful. You're making me think.
It's really fascinating stuff.
Well, what else? Have you got other notes for us here, Danny?
That was kind of what I have on like the kind of the psychology of music and how that relates to pipe band.
Like, why are we all doing this?
Yeah.
I'm sure we've all asked ourselves that sometimes, right? Like, wait, where am I? Why am I doing this?
Well, and I always feel this pull to it. Yeah. Like, whenever I've had periods of my life where I've stepped away, but there's always this, like, every time band season comes around, I just, like, feel almost sick. Like, oh, I want to be part of it. But I think that's... So, when you asked me about this, like, I'm a therapist full-time, but, music therapy is not my specialty, but this was really interesting for me to kind of research this and say, why do we connect? I use music in therapy, but I've never really looked into like why does it do what it does. So it was fascinating for me to really research that and understand that better. So thank you for urging me in that direction.
You're welcome. I will encourage you to do research and give up your Saturday morning free of charge anytime.
All right. So I think that when it boils down to it, a lot of what we get out of pipe band for most of us, it's kind of our self-care. We talked about, how psychology plays into that, but ultimately it's about we as busy human beings with a lot going on, we need to take care of ourselves. And so my plug here is that whatever it is, you've got to find something that you do, something that makes you happy, brings you joy, because ultimately that's what makes life worth living and makes the day worth getting up for. So for me, that's what pipe band is. I'm sure for many people in pipe band, that's a big reason why they do it. It's part of that self-care of doing what you need for yourself spiritually.